Live stream audio check. Gentlemen, we now have 6 o'clock, so I think we can get started. Welcome everybody to our face-to-face meeting of the Council. There may be some people joining us on Microsoft Teams. Do we have anybody? Richard Tucker. He will be able to take part in the debate, but he will not be able to vote. We're streaming today's meeting live on the internet, and a recorded version will be available within 48 hours. Could I ask everybody to put their mobile phones on silent, please? Lots of hands going to their mobile phones. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to the agenda. We have 4 members of the public for public participation. You have 5 minutes. I will let you know when you've got 1 minute left. And if you've got 1 minute left and 5 pages still to say, could you please move to the last page? Because I will cut you off after 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Could I ask John Martell to join us, please? And it won't make a noise because it's my stopwatch and not my alarm, my timer. Does he know how to switch it on?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to address you and hopefully engage your support in my request.
Sorry, I cut you off. I apologise.
Stop the clock.
I'm sorry.
How's that? Is that going? Right. Yes. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all, and hopefully I'll engage your support in my quest to get a decision which allows motorcyclists to ride in bus lanes throughout North Somerset. My name's John Martell. I worked for 40 years in the Avon and Somerset Constabulary, 30 of those in Bristol as a police officer, 10 years down here in North Somerset dealing with licensing matters. I've been a biker for nearly 60 years. So that's the sort of perspective I'm coming from. My focus is on the A370 road to Bristol, which I've ridden thousands of times. And this road has a bus lanes in Congsbury, the approach to Weston, and between Flaxbourton and Bristol. And I'd like to draw particular attention to that area of bus lane, which is on the Long Ashton bypass. Bus lane's about 4 miles long, has a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. It allows the use in the bus lane of cycles, buses and taxis, but motorcycles aren't allowed. I believe that allowing motorcycles to use that bus lane would enhance road safety, benefit the environment, and perhaps reduce costs, the financial costs of road accidents. The Bristol City Council had its road casualty review in 2021, and it looked at the number of people killed or seriously injured, and that's the serious phrase, killed or seriously injured, in road accidents in Bristol. And I can see an improvement in Bristol between the years 2013 and 2021. The number of pedestrians killed or seriously injured were reduced from 40 to 23. Motorcyclists from 31 to 23. Car occupants from 16 to 13. Bristol City Council allows motorcyclists to use the bus lanes and the bus gates throughout the city. And that's particularly noticeable in the centre of the city, on the High Street and Baldwin Street, Bristol Bridge. They positively encourage use of motorcycles, and they provide the parking at street side and in parks to facilitate the use of motorcycles by people going to work. In November 2023, the Avon and Somerset Constabulary held a road safety week and stated there had been an increase in fatal road collisions compared with 2022 in Avon and Somerset. 56 people had been killed in 48 collisions, while the previous year had seen 44 collisions, fatal collisions. That was an increase of 9%. Excess speed was identified as the major factor of the fatal 5 factors. Now, the other 4 factors, of course, would be drunk driving, drug driving, careless driving, using a mobile phone and not wearing a seatbelt. I'd like you all just to bear in mind one other statistic that I noticed when looking at things this year. Motorcyclists are 40 times more likely to die in an accident, and 6 motorcyclists die each week nationally. I'll return to the Long Ashton bypass, where the bus lane occupies the near side lane. Motorcyclists are obliged to use the offside lane, which is the middle lane.
Sorry, you've got 1 minute left. Could you go to the last page?
Puts them to, right, in close proximity with oncoming traffic. That traffic may be observing the 50-mile limit, or it may not. The same also applies to traffic coming from behind you. This is disconcerting enough if you've got cars coming too close behind you. On a car, you get a dent. On a motorcycle, you end up dead, I think. It's my choice always to use the near side lane on a motorway so that I don't have to keep looking behind me for people that are drink driving, using mobile phones or whatever else. I'd argue that most motorcycles are environmentally friendly. Mopeds, you can drive at 16, 125s at 17. They will give you over 100 miles per gallon in some cases. Now, those mopeds and 125 motorcycles, of course, would be forced to use the central lane.
Could you come to a close, please? That's your 5 minutes.
Right.
Right, to the last sentence.
Well, it's a few sentences. But
last one sentence.
well, I believe that there's a number of worthwhile outcomes: road safety, the environment, and financial costs resulting from the allowance of use of bus lanes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Could I ask for Steve Voller to come up now, please?
Madam Chair, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Sometimes it's very easy, and there's a natural tendency for everybody to focus on the negative. I'd like to talk about something positive this evening. My name's Steve Voller. I live in Banwell. I've lived there for about 20 years. I'm speaking today in my capacity as the organiser of the Build Our Bypass scheme, which some of you may recall back in March last year, so almost a year ago, the PNR committee at long last gave it the go-ahead from a planning perspective. That was then followed on later in the year by a unanimous vote from all the councillors in here to give it the go-ahead and also to secure additional funding, which through no fault of anybody in this room nor in the council was needed to actually get the project over the line from a funding capacity perspective. And then in January, the long-awaited results from the CPO public inquiry came through, and the Secretary of State has now given the scheme the go-ahead. And I'm pleased to confirm that as of yesterday, high-vis vests were actually spotted out in Banwell doing some preparatory work for the bypass. So with all that good news, why am I here? Well, it's about focusing on the positives. So I would just like to say a heartfelt thanks to all of the councillors in the room here. That's both the present councillors and also past councillors who may not be in the room today, but have supported the scheme over the many, many years that we've been trying to get it over the line, and people have been working on it much longer than I have been working on it. It's going to make a tremendous difference to the residents of Banwell, for the whole area, for anybody trying to go through the village who's been subject to the delays and the frustration and the stress that that causes. And for the villagers in the village itself, it's going to make a huge difference in terms of less noise, less pollution, less damage in the conservation area. And you know what? We'll actually be able to walk on our footpaths without fearing for our lives. And that oft-quoted phrase, Banwell's living hell, will hopefully just be something in the past which we can all reminisce about come March 2026, when hopefully the scheme will be opened. So that was it. Just to say thank you very much for all of your support for the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for such a positive words. So, Debbie Apted? Do we have Debbie?
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, right. Good evening, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. As well as a resident of North Somerset, I'm also the community lead for Plastic Free Weston-super-Mare, a Surfers Against Sewage initiative which began here in 2017 under the Cleaner Coastline strapline. Our Facebook group has nearly 2,000 members, primarily from North Somerset. I was interested to hear Councillor Waite's proposal to consult for 3 weekly collections of black bins discussed at the Executive Committee on February the 7th. Since the inception of our campaign, my own awareness and understanding of waste management has grown considerably. Visiting our local recycling centre, I was shocked by the costs incurred due to improper recycling practices, and specifically around food waste. It was evident that better recycling practices could save a significant amount of money into the hundreds and thousands of pounds a year, which could be allocated to essential services. Since then, I've been passionate about getting this message across when I've been delivering talks as part of our campaign to various community groups. We really, literally are throwing money away. Residents are quite rightly very quick to criticise when they think the council are wasting our money. But in some way, we should all be responsible for not wasting money ourselves. It shouldn't have to be a them and us with the situation with the council versus residents, but a collaboration to bring about a real positive behaviour change and to improve our local environment, even more so if it helps the planet at the same time. Figures show about half the waste in our black bins isn't meant to be there. Many residents want to recycle correctly, but lack awareness and understanding of the impact of not doing so. Educating the community, possibly creating a video of what happens to our waste, explaining the costs incurred, and using engaging content could bridge this gap. Initiatives like the upcoming Big Plastic Count from the 11th to 17th of March can quantify plastic use as well as promote recycling. If participants would use the Surfers Against Sewage link, the results can be analysed to community level if enough people join in. Those results could then form part of a wider comms. I would also suggest resurrecting the Recycling and Waste Citizens panel, utilising social media and holding many face-to-face discussions to disseminate information effectively. This past week alone, I've learned of at least 3 barriers to recycling that haven't been raised to me before, just by talking to residents outside of my usual circle. I'll share these with Councillor Waite. Plastic pollution is increasing exponentially, necessitating robust recycling efforts. Implementing 3 weekly collections, like other councils already do, would save costs and reduce environmental impact. Visual aids, such as recycling progress trackers, I'm thinking of the old school charity thermometers, could reinforce positive messaging. Furthermore, I think addressing practical issues like seagull-proof bins and preventing fly tipping in town is essential to get the public on site. Above all, I would urge the Council to involve the many local community groups in North Somerset, include accessibility professionals and behavioural economists in creating content. Use relatable messengers to encourage widespread participation in the consultation. This is a consultation that affects all of us.
1 minute left. Thank you.
Oh, lost my place now. No, that's all right. So, yeah, this is a consultation that affects all of us, and everyone has a view on bins and rubbish and recycling. Collaborating with environmental and community groups, as well as participating in public events, can amplify the message of responsible waste management. I've got some suggestions: visiting community hubs, coffee mornings, neighbourhood watch groups, Lions, Roundtable, Rotary, Freemasons, Ropterists, U3A, housing associations, many, many more. There are many eco-churches, and our own Nassim Talakdar's Project Against Plastic charity promotes the National Plastic-Free Ramadan campaign. Hold awareness days at community living rooms. Councillors could hold special surgeries in their wards. Couldn't you? Have a presence at public events, eat festivals, monthly markets. My next community talk to a local friendship.
Could you go to the last sentence on your little talk, please?
Yep. In summary, let's unite as a community to save resources and support essential services. Together, we really can make a tangible difference instead of squandering valuable resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure our executive member will take on many of your ideas. Could I ask Michelle Michael to come up now, please?
Good evening. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk this evening. My name is Michelle Michael. I'm a director at the Grampier. My family and extended family own around 21 businesses in Weston-super-Mare that rely on tourism to work. My family have been in business since 1960 in Weston-super-Mare in hotels, restaurants and supplies to the hospitality industry. My aunt and uncle used to own the property known as the Oxford Corner Restaurant in Oxford Street. It was purchased from them after being in their family for 40 years by Homes England for a mixed-use scheme, along with the land surrounding it. The family asked for an extended stay in it by way of a lease, and as they were nearing retirement, and lived upstairs. A short-term licence was agreed, but following the fire at Grenfell Towers, they asked them to have some rather stringent fire safety measures as they were living upstairs, which proved cost prohibitive. It finally closed its doors in September the 17th, 2017. The family were refused an option to continue with trading and move out of the accommodation. Since then, the premises remain closed. They were recently transferred to North Somerset Council, along with the coach parking site in Locking Road and Area B at Sunnyside Road. If you look at the current state of it, it is in a terrible condition. This evening, I represent the interests of Winston's Fish Bar on Oxford Street, which belongs to my sister, who is unwell at the moment and unable to attend. I also represent the interests of the others in that surrounding area. The view for their guests is terrible. The building deteriorates year on year, and it has now affected the income for Winston's for the last 3 years and for other businesses around. The property has fallen into total disrepair. There's an accumulation of sand, weeds and falling debris. The sign has been taken down, but the words still appear through rusty remnants. It is an eyesore and not a good sight for visitors or locals to look at, and is in a prime location on the seafront. A mural was started on the front and not finished. People are illegally parking on the site at their whim, and we have witnessed debris falling from the site from the flat roof and the fascias. I understand that resources are scarce, but I would like to ask the Council what is going to happen in the short term about this building. I understand that there has been an agreement in principle with Baines Council but this does not help in the short term. I believe that something needs to be done in the immediate future, otherwise businesses in that area will be closing. Is there a short-term plan? Is there a long-term plan? And what do we expect to see done there in both of those instances? Are there any funds that could get the site demolished, painted or cleared? Many people are asking why it was not demolished before, as the site is beyond its viable use as a building. I feel that if this site were owned by an individual or a company, then they would be under pressure to do something about it. This has been a blight on the core area of the seafront since December 2017. That is over 7 years ago. In addition, it now seems that Carlton Street car park has restrictions on parking spaces due to structural damage, and at least half of that is out of action. It may be some use if the area between the Oxford Corner restaurant and the Premier Inn was opened as a car park, either by the council or subcontracted to a third party to provide some town centre car parking to visitors and make that area a little bit more buoyant so that businesses could benefit in the meantime. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. Thank you. Apologies for absence now.
Advance apologies have been received from councillors Shopland, Young, Cartman, Ellis and Holland.
Declaration of disposable pecuniary interest. Anybody declaring anything? Nobody. Thank you. Minutes of the last meeting. Leader, Mike.
Move approval, Chairman, Chairperson, Chairwoman, whatever you want. What do you prefer?
Wendy.
Forgotten. Move approval, Wendy.
Seconder. Councillor Mason. Sorry? Councillor Burden, you wish to say something?
Yes, Madam Chairman, or Wendy. I have a problem. I have a serious problem referring to the democratic process involved by this council. Something I've never come across in 40 years of involvement, and I might seeking your advice. If you go to page 9, 10 of the minutes, we have a simple statement from Councillor Waite, addressing members, advising them of the request to the meeting of the 11th of November. Now, the resolution passed by this council on the 11th of November had two parts to it. And as Christmas had been in the way, I accepted that it might have been slightly difficult to carry out that, so I didn't push the point. But, Madam Chairman, the second part of the resolution carried by this council on the 11th of November has not been carried out. It was not carried out at the last meeting, as admitted here in the minutes, and it has not been carried out today. For members' information, I will read it. That we ask the Council's representative on the Regional Flood and Coastal Defence Committee to report at the next meeting of the Council on the important works in the district that the Environment Agency no longer fund. I was very specific on that point, Madam Chairman, on the grounds I've been on that committee for 14 years, most of the time as a sub for the executive member there. It is important that there is a link between the drainage boards and the Environment Agency and elected members of this council. And Chairman, I have never come across a situation before where a straightforward resolution passed by council has been ignored so blatantly. Please, can I have some advice on how I take this matter forward?
Thank you.
Chairman, I think all that we can do is Councillor Waite brings forward what information she has, but as was explained at the last meeting, she has written to the Environment Agency for further detailed information, and that has yet to be forthcoming.
But Chairman, that does not cover the point. Councillor Waite is a council's official appointee on the Regional Flood and Coastal Defence Committee. Tonight, we are agreeing a levy for that body that is raising money from the residents of this district. Councillor Waite, I presume, was at that meeting. At that meeting was the work plan of the Environment Agency. I do not expect officers to come forward. The scrutiny process going on through
thank
the
you.
panel, I'm happy with, Madam Chairman, but
Thank
the
you.
report should be from the councillor.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the leader's coming in here.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Burden, for your comments. I will give you the undertaking now that we will ensure with Councillor Waite that there is an update at the next council meeting. I can only apologise that the spirit of the resolution that was passed in November has not been delivered to your satisfaction. I think the executive member has indeed provided updates and written to the Environment Agency in line with the decision that was made by Council in November, but I accept that you were looking for a verbal update and discussion at a council meeting, so we'll make sure that that happens for the next meeting. And perhaps in future, if I could just encourage colleagues, if they have these frustrations about process, please flag them early so that we can do something about it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leader.
All those in favour then, given that comment over there, all those in favour of the minutes? Carried, thank you. So my announcements, a couple of sad ones really. Many of you will know David Jolly. He has passed away, so our condolences to his friends and family. But also, David Shopland's wife died suddenly last week, unexpectedly, and so we send our condolences and sympathies to him and his family. I'd also like to say thank you to the executive members and to the officers. We've had 2-3 months, all of us, having the budget debate and discussions and concerns given to us in briefings, in papers, in every possible chance to ask questions and give comments. We are fully informed as we come to our budget meeting tonight, so thank you to everybody. I know there's been a lot of paperwork, but I'm sure you've scrutinised them as we've gone over the last few months. I'm going to allow Councillor Crockford-Hawley 1 minute, just 1 minute, to talk about the birthday of this council. I'm timing you, Councillor Crockford-Hawley.
Thank you, Chairman. Don't interrupt, Councillor Solomon. It might be worth noting that by the time we next meet, this council will have clocked up its half-century. Ted Heath created Avon and Woodspring, and then Woodspring, without statutory dissolution, morphed into North West Somerset Council, which very soon changed its name to North Somerset Council. And here we are today celebrating our 50th anniversary, though looking around, there are 1 or 2 members who won't have a clue what I'm talking about, because they are mere children, as the rest of us were once upon a time. So happy birthday, everyone. We're 50 years old.
Well done, John. That was less than a minute. Thank you. So now we come to item 6 and item 7, which are going to be taken together. If I could ask Councillor Mike Bell to kick us off.
Thanks, Wendy. So as Wendy has said, the intent is to take the recommendations from the executive in relation to the revenue budget, medium-term financial plan, treasury management strategy and capital strategy together with the council tax setting resolution under item 7. They obviously all naturally flow one into the other, so I hope that will help colleagues to understand and debate the issues, but also to have some sort of logical order to the discussions that we're having. It's probably worth reminding members at this point, and I know the Chair will at the end of the debate, that we will need to have a named vote on the council tax setting resolution in accordance with national law. So be prepared for that, colleagues. This has obviously been a very tough year to achieve the balanced budget. Everyone will be aware that in addition to the inflationary pressures on our costs, we've continued to see growth in demand for services, particularly the statutory social care services for children and adults, and of course in-year pressures that we have had to act to mitigate. Together with the poor local government grant settlement that sees North Somerset robbed of around £37 million in government grant every year compared to the average English council, and you can see why we've got the perfect storm of financial vulnerability. Against this backdrop, I am pleased to be able to present a balanced budget that continues to support our core services for the community and deliver long-term investments, but does so without shirking the difficult choices that need to be made. The medium-term financial plan sets out £16 million worth of savings, efficiencies and increased income for 24-25, and a further £26 million in future years. Overall, the MTFP will have achieved savings and efficiencies of £50 million over 5 years. And I want to particularly pay tribute to the hard work and dedication of all of our staff who have helped to identify and deliver this ambitious savings and transformation programme. I know that working under the pressure of tight budgets, the vacancy freeze that we've got in place at the moment, and more complex routes to get spending signed off is not easy, but it is the right thing for us to do as we continue to try and meet the challenges facing us and delivering for local people. I want to particularly also thank all of the officer team for their hard work in getting us through this process. It has genuinely been really difficult this time around, so a big thank you to Amy and Mel and all of the finance support officers and all of the teams across the directorates for their hard work. But we must not hide from the difficult decisions that are in these proposals. We are increasing council tax and the adult social care precept. We all know that this will hit the pockets of local people at a time when many are struggling to make ends meet. We will be increasing our fees and charges to generate income or cover costs of providing services. We are going to be looking at ways to achieve further savings in services, including difficult areas like home-to-school transport and looked after children, and through parking charges. None of these are things that we would choose to do, but are instead forced upon us by the circumstances which we face. Our responsibility is to balance the books and deliver our core services in the most efficient and effective way possible, and under this partnership administration, we will continue to do that. I would like to thank colleagues from all groups for their engagement in the budget setting process, their willingness to consider new approaches and determination to ensure that North Somerset Council does not follow some other authorities into bankruptcy. We're doing the right things to plan for the long term, but of course, fundamentally, the system of local government finance is broken. We do not have access to the tools we need to do the job, either in the form of powers to generate income or in a fair national funding system to balance the nation's wealth. We have continued to lobby government and the opposition front benches on the need for reform, proper devolution of powers and long-term change to financing and taxation models. Without that change from future governments, local services will continue a slow death and local government will, I fear, disappear completely. But it's important in this context to reflect that it's not all doom and gloom. So I think we should celebrate and recognise the good work that our staff do all year round, work that this budget and capital programme will continue to prioritise. This coming year, we will support our schools with around £250 million in funding for their day-to-day work. We will finish the delivery of several new schools, including primary and secondary schools at Locking Parklands, the new Battery School expansion site in Clevedon, and a specialist unit for children and young people in Churchill. We will continue to invest in highways and pavement maintenance, not as much as we would all like, I accept, but we will be able to add local resources to government funding to carry out repairs effectively and try and invest for the long term. We will continue to deliver high-performing waste and recycling collections with a recycling performance in the top 10 in the country. We will support and invest in our leisure centres, including making them more environmentally sustainable. We will support public health and deliver a new action plan to tackle inequality, particularly in those areas where there is the greatest levels of deprivation. Our trading standards and community safety teams will continue to be our eyes and ears in the community, working to tackle antisocial behaviour and support the police. We will work with town and parish councils to improve community spaces and play areas and explore other ways to deliver partnerships that make a difference. And we will invest in housing, including tackling inequality in the rented sector, and continue our success to deliver record numbers of affordable homes. We're working hard as well to protect and enhance our environment and take effective local action on climate change. Most importantly, we will deliver the caring services that our community needs. Good early years support and family hubs to give children the best healthy start in life, looking after children that need us and providing support to families with children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities, and delivering support in the home and promoting independence to adults with learning or physical disabilities, and of course doing the thing that traditionally is associated with social care, which is providing care in the home and in care settings for our citizens as they reach their older years. We seem to have stopped clapping for carers, but this council continues to recognise and back all carers, whether professional, volunteers or their families, and show our gratitude to those working in health and care. On the capital front, long-term investments for a stronger North Somerset can be seen in the pages of this report, but also in reality on the ground. The Portishead to Bristol railway line will commence this year, all being well. The Banwell bypass work is already underway, as we heard from the public speaker, and our bus service improvement programme continues at pace. We'll be delivering improvements to the A38 this year, and we will also deliver, of course, on the progress to restore Burnback Pier and deliver on the levelling up commitments in Weston-super-Mare. Our job is to deliver for local people, and under our partnership administration, this is a council that listens, cares and is delivering. So I would urge members to support the recommendations and help to continue our work together to keep moving North Somerset forward.
Thank you, Mike. Do you have a seconder? Catherine? Catherine. Thank you. Do we have any questions? No? Caritas, were you first? And then yeah.
I'd like to thank all that have worked on this budget, and I think it's really a testimony to councillors and staff who've worked on this at such difficult times. I wanted, more than a question, to add some of the human aspect to this. We look at columns of figures, and sometimes that can dehumanise the actual impact that council services deliver. And I know that we all have stories from people that we represent of how they benefit from council services, but also how they suffer from the lack of the services that we provide. I had an example of someone who was a mother working in a managerial role in the social sector, was looking for a place to live, couldn't afford to live in the town of Portishead that she was brought up in, went for housing advice and got told the nearest place she'd be able to live was Cardiff. I have had examples of parents who, due to our poor transport infrastructure, have children that miss on average 10 to 12 hours of schooling because the buses don't arrive on time. I've had examples of people that do not have access to vital medical care because they can't get an adequate doctor's appointment. I've had play equipment that lies rusted and when it's taken away is never replaced. We have car parks that are swamps, and this is only going to get worse. I know we're entering an election year and all of my party political colleagues will be as peacocks posturing to say how great their individual parties are, but I believe that this is a problem that goes beyond party political posturing. We are looking at dangerous times for local authorities, and we are looking at times that look like the destruction of an entire layer of local government. And I hope, turning to my colleagues over here, that I could call on you to be a campaigning council all and use some of the enthusiasm you developed and the skills you developed to campaign for Clevedon Seafront, to campaign for my resident who had to move to Cardiff, to campaign for the murky bogs that are our car parks. Can you throw some of that similar enthusiasm that way too? Could you do that? And could you challenge your leaders?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So just to reiterate both Caritas and Councillor Bell's comments about, you know, what dangerous times we're living in for local government, and but also to thank the staff, particularly Mel Watts and Amy Webb, who've yet again managed to get to a balanced budget after 14 years now of continued cuts to local government funding. But I just want to talk very briefly about some of the concerns I have for future years' savings. You know, I do support this budget generally, but I do have some concerns. So in particular, I'm concerned about the creation of 3 family hubs and the impact on our residents of the possible closure of 14 children's centres, particularly for those people who use their local children's centre but do not have their own transport to travel to one further away. Many children's centres are also co-located with libraries, so there's likely to be an impact there. And anyone who visits a library regularly knows that libraries are so much more nowadays than just a place to borrow books, even though that in itself is incredibly important. And when I personally hear the phrase reviewing and reshaping the delivery of library services, which is mentioned in this report, it does make me shudder, and it makes me remember a time 10 or 15 years ago when communities took legal actions against councils for trying to close their libraries. And some people may think we can get parish councils, volunteers and others to provide library services, but that really only works in middle-class areas like Congresbury. In areas in Weston and Wirral where people are busy simply surviving, they don't have time to volunteer. And we also know that if volunteers don't show up, then services close. Also of concern to parents and carers will be the review of home-to-school transport, including the non-statutory requirement to provide transport to particular groups of children. And in my view, if we brought the service back in-house, it would give us the ability to control costs and provide transport for every child that needs it. It was interesting to me reading the public engagement and consultation on the corporate plan and budget, which revealed very high levels of support for bringing services back in-house from commercial companies, and similarly low levels of support for transferring services out to commercial companies, although there was admittedly more support for transferring services to community groups and parish councils. Once upon a time, North Somerset Council had its own in-house home-to-school transport team until the previous Conservative administration shut it down. And we've been suffering the consequences of that decision for quite a while, and I personally look forward to the recreation of what was called our DSO transport team. Finally, hopefully we will see that at least some of our support services, which were transferred to Agilicis around 15 years ago, will also be brought back in-house, as that very large contract has been split up, and we'll be voting on part of that later. And I've mentioned this before, but I would personally like to see North Somerset Council always make a presumption in favour of providing services in-house, and if looking to outsource, always providing an in-house option as a comparator when deciding on bids from commercial or other companies. But I support this budget.
Thank you for those comments, Helen. Thank you. Dee Bridger, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just a brief comment, just wanted to speak for 1 minute, just to absolutely support the comments that, for Caritas and Helen. Thank Mike and the Executive for bringing the budget to Council. I just wanted to pick out one very brief detail from the report, actually, which is tucked away towards paragraph 3.12, which is a reference to the Council entering into a safety valve agreement with the Department for Education. It's quite a technical point, but for colleagues who aren't aware, this relates to the ending of the dedicated schools grant, something called the statutory override, which effectively protected councils from making provision in their general reserves to cover historical dedicated schools grant deficits. So why do I mention this? Well, the agreement that the council entered into means that we will receive £21 million of additional funding from the government over the next 5 years to help relieve pressure on school funding and drive forward service improvements for young people in North Somerset. Negotiating that agreement, which was about a year ago, was a great achievement, but it went kind of under the radar at the time because we think we were in the pre-election period for other reasons as well. Not all councils reached agreement with the DFE, and it's not insignificant. It means that hopefully this council can reach a positive in-year balance on its DSG grant by April 2027. We'll have to see, won't we? But I think what is true is that without that agreement, that would have punched a huge hole in our budget and may have actually tipped us over the edge. So I just wanted to take this opportunity really to, even though it's a year late or nearly a year late, to applaud the work of our chief executive and her officers who worked on that particular project. That includes Sheila Smith, who was obviously our DCS before she retired last year. Amy Webb over there, the finance business partner in particular, and others, of course. And then there was political oversight by Councillor Gibbons, I think Councillor Cartman in his previous executive role. So, 21 million quid is a lot.
Yeah. And Pip Hesketh, who did a lot of the consultation work. Pip Hesketh.
And Pip, of course, Pip Hesketh. So I just wanted to sort of make that brief comment, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. It's certainly worthwhile looking at the paperwork about the safety valve. It's been a very important aspect for children's services. Nigel, you're next.
Thank you. Mike, I think in your introduction, I don't think there's anything in there that I could disagree with. We could have been saying that for the last 15 years. We've all got our differences on what we'd prioritise and little local things that we'd like to have done. But I think that just trivialises the problem we've now got and have had for some years. I don't think local government, certainly in North Somerset, has ever had the money it needs to do what it has to do, let alone what it would like to do or what the public deserve. And I think it is only going to get worse. I think we have to face the fact that governments of both colours, every colour, don't have a lot of faith in local government as it stands at the moment and wants to see it probably even more centralised than it already is. So I think it's going to become more difficult. Certainly we'll support your budget. We'll always have differences on various aspects of it, and I've got a list here, but I'm not going to go through it. I think budgets are so tight, and North Somerset have always been lowly funded because from the starting point it always goes up by a percentage. Well, a percentage of nothing, I usually use another term, but I won't. A percentage of nothing is still nothing, and we've always been behind, I think. So we will support it. We will have differences, but I just have one query on the starting point, if I might, Mike. And it may have changed because I see there's another paper come out which I'm afraid I haven't had the time to look at, and that's the numbers. You state on, I think it was page 28, that there's a shortfall in this year, and there was also a shortfall over the remaining years of the MTFP. And then you say that you've balanced this year and you've balanced next year, and yet on page 30 in the table there, it shows that there's still £10 million worth, I think, of savings, proposals and increased in income. Can you just assure me that you've actually made those savings and you've implemented those decisions so they are actually working and we will have a balanced budget by the end of this year, which isn't long to go now, or are you going to still be relying on reserves? That's just so I get the right starting point, but overall, can't argue with anything you've done. I have total sympathy with your position. I had 10 years of cuts. I know how frustrating and disappointing it is. If you could just clarify that, and we're quite happy to go to the vote, to be honest.
Thank you for that, and I'm sure Mike will address that in a minute. Bridget, I think you are possibly the last person who wants to say something on this.
Thank you. As others have said, I agree with many of the points people made and the concerns that we all carry. In coming to office, in being elected, we all hope to be able to represent our communities and make things better for people. And when you start the budget process and find that there is less and less available to support your residents, it is it's highly disappointing. You know, I think it was interesting attending something recently where I was informed that from this last election in May, 50% of councillors were new. And in 2019, when I was elected, you arrive with aspirations of being able to shape your community and specifically stand up for the lives of those who are struggling in your area and beyond. I actually think I have a question. I know that in the last phase, when Ashley Cartman was the finance lead, we did some work on ensuring that we increased the support for those who are genuinely unable to afford to pay the council tax. And I'm thinking that at this time, with inflation being so crippling to so many households and the situation facing so many of our residents, whether job changes are happening or just their household costs are increasing, such as continued increase in electricity bills, I'm just thinking of the facing of an additional increase in council tax. Mike, has there been a chance to check in on the support that we as a council have available to those who are unable to afford to pay? And I'm sorry, my language has gone on what that account or that support was called, but I wanted to ask, has that been reviewed this year, and specifically in reflection of the changing economic landscape for so many residents in our district? Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. I think I now shall ask Mike if he'd like to reply to some of the comments and points made. Over to you, Mike.
Yes, thank you, Wendy. And I will just quickly canter through if I can. So, Caritas, we absolutely agree with everything you said. Essentially, you know, absolutely sobering analysis of the challenge facing local government across the country. And that's why we're seeing more and more councils issuing Section 114 notices, effectively going into bankruptcy. And it's why it's so critical that we continue to do what we've been doing, which is arguing for a different system nationally, lobbying the political parties, doing what we can collectively as members with our local MPs and others to lobby for change, but also to make sure that we balance the books as best we can, because if we don't do that, then we risk being in the situation where commissioners are sent in by government, there's a fire sale of assets, as we're seeing in Birmingham, for example, and services slashed. Nobody wants that for North Somerset, so it's important that we continue to do the right things. Helen very helpfully highlighting some of the risks, and what I would say is there are loads of risks in this report, lots of savings ambitions and transformation savings, which is all about trying to do things differently to save money. Some of that will mean lesser services for people, and we have to be open and honest about that and try and do that in a way that mitigates that impact on those that most need those services. But it's also why on some of the detail we will need to bring people with us to consult and to consider the implications of some of those decisions before we take them forward. But I appreciate your comments, and particularly about bringing things in-house, which as you know, we're really keen to look at. Thanks, Steve, on the safety valve stuff. Very important point to land. Nigel, in terms of the budget, so at the moment we will be using reserves to balance the budget this year. Although we have put in mitigations in terms of vacancy freeze and spending controls, realistically our cost pressures are such that we're not going to be able, or unlikely to be able, to achieve a balanced budget in the current year because of those demands, so we will be using reserves. But we haven't factored that in for future years now, so we are confident that 24-25 we're going to go into it on an even keel. But you're right, if you've only got to look at the figures to realise that the challenge doesn't disappear, and exactly as you said, we've had more than 10 years of this, and so it is going to go on. So this is the new normal, isn't it, really? We keep talking about it as if it's exceptional circumstances, but it's the reality of where we are and where we have been for a long time. And then Bridget, on council tax and affordability, really important point. Interestingly, we haven't actually seen an increase in demand for council tax support. So hopefully that means that our community is proving pretty resilient to some of the cost of living pressures that we've seen at the moment. But what we really do need is two things. We need a clear commitment in the budget that the government is going to extend the Household Support Fund. That's several £million that could be ripped out of the local economy in terms of those that are those on the lowest incomes. So that's support for those on council tax benefit, those families with free school meal eligible children and so on. There is still a real risk that that's going to be withdrawn, and that will have a big impact on our communities. And the other is that we need a national council tax support system. It is absolutely ludicrous that the government decided to localise it and create this, lottery where you've got different levels of support depending on where you happen to live. And it's really frustrating because it's not even related to the ability of a community to fund it. We know that North Somerset's council tax, second lowest in the southwest, one of the lowest in the country. That means that we're millions of pounds behind the curve every single year in terms of our council tax income, which directly hits our ability to fund a good council tax support system. So it should be nationally supported. So a very good point, and we'll continue to look at that and how we can mitigate the impacts on the most vulnerable households.
Thank you for that. Now, I think that's everybody, and we're now going to go to a named vote. So I'll hand over to our solicitor to run the named vote.
Thank you, Chair. As members will know, the national legislation, as the leader indicated, requires a named vote on the council tax setting part of the agenda. If you're happy, I will take all of the recommendations en bloc, even though it's only the actual council tax calculation that is the statutory requirement. So you've had the motion moved. I will ask each councillor alphabetically whether you are for the motion, which is effectively the budget and the council tax setting, whether you vote for, against or abstain, please. Councillor Applin.
For.
Councillor Ashton. Councillor Bell.
For.
Councillor Bird.
For.
Councillor Blades. Councillor Bridger.
For.
Councillor Bryant. Councillor Burden. Councillor Caniford.
For.
I have apologies from Councillor Cartman. Councillor Chard. Councillor Charles.
For.
Councillor Clayton. Councillor Cole is not with us. Councillor Coles.
For.
Councillor Crew. Councillor Crockford-Hawley. Councillor Cronolly. Councillor Davies is not with us. Councillor Dorr.
For.
Councillor Ellis has given apologies. Councillor Gibbons.
For.
Councillor Griggs.
For.
Councillor Homaris. Councillor Holland is not with us. Councillor Hunt.
For.
Councillor Keating. Councillor Mallion. Councillor Mason.
For.
Councillor McQuillan.
For.
Councillor Nicholson.
For.
Councillor Parker. Councillor Payne.
For.
Councillor Pepperell. Councillor Petty.
For.
Councillor Pilgrim.
For.
Councillor Porter.
For.
Councillor Pryke.
For.
Councillor Shopland is absent. Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Snaden.
For.
Councillor Solomon. Councillor Thomas.
For.
Councillor Thornton.
For.
Councillor Tristram.
For.
Councillor Tucker is on Teams, so not entitled to a vote. Councillor Waite. Councillor Whitfield. Councillor Williams. And Councillor Young is absent. So of those present, it's a unanimous vote, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to item 8, it's the Mike Bell Roadshow again. So the corporate plan 24 to 28. Over to you, Mike.
Yes, apologies, colleagues. You are going to hear a bit from me tonight. So corporate plan. So obviously following the local elections in May 2023, we started work on a refresh of the corporate plan. The draft corporate plan for 2024 to 2028 has now been developed through engagement with our staff, with residents and with stakeholders, and confirms our existing vision to be open, fair and green. The plan has 4 headline ambitions, so it's a slight change to what we've had before, focused on children and young people, a healthy and strong communities, thriving and sustainable towns and villages, and then a council that delivers consistently good services and value for money. I want to particularly thank Emma Diaku and her team for all of their hard work on the corporate plan, both in terms of supporting the community engagement activity that we had in the autumn of last year, which also actually supported budget engagement as well. And, you know, just to underline that Emma's personal commitment to this was so extraordinary that there were a number of times when she was unlocking dark village halls in order to put me in front of a few residents. So she's really gone the extra mile, giving up time to get out there and make sure that we really communicated the corporate plan process to the community. So really appreciate it, Emma. Alongside the ambitions and commitments and actions that we've identified in the supporting action plan, there are also specific outcome measures so that we can monitor progress and measure that going forward over the next few years. I think the only other thing that I would mention in relation to the corporate plan is that we, as colleagues will know, we did have a local government association corporate peer challenge recently. And we are currently awaiting the full report following the feedback. So we will obviously want to consider whether further updates to the corporate plan will be appropriate in line with any recommendations from the LGA team. But other than that, I'm happy to propose that we adopt the new corporate plan for the next 4 years.
Do you have a seconder, Mike? Catherine? Anybody want to raise anything? Caritas, go ahead.
Just with regards, I wanted to also offer my thanks and praise for the efforts that the staff team and the executive have gone to for engagement. It's a huge improvement over recent years, and thank you very much for that. But I also wanted to ask Mike a question about the ongoing monitoring of the corporate plan and bringing it to life in the public perspective, and how that might be foreseen and how the public may be able to monitor our commitments through the corporate plan and our delivery, and also to use the corporate plan as a tool to inform the public more about what local authorities actually do, because some of the things we face is the fact that the public just doesn't have a clue what we do, what our limitations are, and what we have to spend, and this document could be a very good framework for doing that.
I don't seem to have any more hands up, so if I'd like to ask Mike to answer that.
Yeah, great question, Caritas. So we do already publish the dashboard of indicators on the website. So members of the public, if they've got a quiet evening, can go on to the dashboard and have a look at how we're doing and drill into the detail. But we will be looking to see how we can build on that. And I really like the idea of making that a much more living and understandable and accessible document that can really capture the range of what we do, because you and I have spoken about this before, but you know, there is so little understanding out there about how local government works, what services we deliver, who is responsible for what we've got control over, and so on. The more we can do that and bring that to life, as you described, the better. So we'll certainly work on that as much as we can.
Thank you. So we go to the vote, please. All those in favour of accepting the recommendation, hands up, please. Thank you. All those abstaining? Just Nigel. Against? Sorry, turn my mic off. Anyone against? No. Thank you very much. Item 9. Before I bring Councillor Bell in again, he can have a 2-minute rest. There was red papers. Can I say that at the moment we're in a public meeting and we do not mention the preferred service provider for this particular contract? If anybody wants to discuss the proposed service provider, we would have to go into a private meeting and it would become another agenda item at the very end of this meeting. So if anybody wants to do that, please indicate. We have a vote whether the councillors want to do that, and it goes at the end of the meeting. Does anybody want to? Helen?
I don't want to do that, but one of my questions would potentially have indicated who that bidder is.
Well,
so
you can't do that in the public
Yeah,
session.
no.
Can I suggest you put a...
well, that's what I was going to say. Can I put who can I put my question to? Who can I email?
To Mike.
To Mike. I'll email you, Mike. Thanks.
Thank you. So any questions about this, please do not hint, mention or say anything that could identify the service provider. Over to you, Mike.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully colleagues have read the paper. So as Helen alluded to earlier, the existing support service contract is due to expire. And as a result, we've previously agreed as a council to divide up the existing contract into several smaller and more agile contracts to give us some more flexibility about how we procure them, but also how we deliver those services in the future. And to be clear, the drivers around that are very much about how can we mitigate cost pressures in delivery of these services and how can we deliver better outcomes for service users and for the council. So this particular report relates to the recommendation to appoint in principle a preferred bidder for what we're calling contract pool 1, which is revenues, benefits, welfare, exchequer and civil enforcement administration services. The process to date has been very comprehensive, so we've been working at this over a long period of time, and the officer team have been doing loads of detailed work to assess value for money, compare the market and consider what is available out there, and also look at how those costs compare against other councils, but also in terms of alternative delivery models, including in-house provision or potentially having a shared service model with another local authority. We've got to the point where the recommendation is to go with this preferred bidder and to further continue the negotiations to finalise a contract. We know that the value of the contract is likely to be in the range of £35 to £65 million, depending on the length of period that's agreed and the impact of future inflationary uplifts. But savings associated with the new model will be significant and are already contributing to the delivery of our MTFP savings over the coming years. So I move the recommendation and hope that Council will support.
Do we have a seconder, please? Thank you. Bearing in mind what I said earlier, does anybody want to say anything? Helen?
Yeah, sorry, I do have one question that doesn't identify the preferred bidder, and I think it's always the case with any outsourced service that it's all about the monitoring, and there can be a tendency when you're outsourcing, and I know this service is already outsourced, but there can be a tendency in outsourcing to make these claims for savings without factoring in the resources that you need to monitor the contract. So my question is, what resources have we set aside to monitor this contract? Is it improved on what has been the case, or is it less or same?
Thank you, Helen. There seems to be nobody else. So Mike, could I ask you to answer Helen and then sum up?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say on that, Helen, is that in relation to this particular contract, our existing arrangements actually work very well, we have a board which meets regularly with the provider, and we drill into a lot of the detail in terms of the performance indicators, and particularly around financial performance and costs, and I think it's a very effective model. So the new arrangement won't propose any significant changes from that. However, one advantage, of course, of having a separate relationship with an individual provider is obviously that makes the contact more direct with that individual provider. So I would expect us to deliver some improvements on the back of that as well. But otherwise, I've no further comments to sum up.
Thank you. All those in favour of supporting and accepting the recommendation, please. Thank you. All those abstaining? Anyone against? Thank you. The motion is carried. On to item 10 with another mic. So, commissioning plan for the operator for the Tropicana. Mike Solomon, where are you?
Oh, the real mic, please stand. All right. Yes, this is a recommendation to approve the commissioning plan for the procurement of an operator for the Tropicana as set out in sections 310 to 329 of this report. Just a summary of where we're at. The Tropicana is currently run by our own team, and North Somerset Council team, and they have various events in there. We've got the ice scape. We have Bingo Lingo, if anybody knows what that is, and various other events. We also have a concession running the cafe at the front. What's happening now is more and more local authorities are actually divesting themselves of running these places because we're not really geared to run places like the Tropicana. So we now have got money from the Levelling Up Fund, close to £9 million that we can invest in the Tropicana. And we have a vision for the Tropicana for the future to make it an all year round events, cultural place to go, really. So we do have a lot of ambition, and it's a very prime position on our seafront. I know there's an awful lot of controversy about it, but it is part of Weston-super-Mare and has been for a very, very long time. So we're looking out now to procure an operator, and as far as that operator is concerned, we'll look to give them a long lease, 15 years plus. It might be more than that. It's down to the commercial side of things, and it will be a full repair lease. They will have full responsibility so that we don't incur any costs. But we'll also build in things like flood management and various things with events going on, because whoever takes that over would have to work with our own teams if we're doing events elsewhere, so we don't have conflicts of interest there. So that's where we're going. The one thing the officers are currently looking at a procurement for a specialist advisor from an entertainment venue procurement contractor who can provide strong connections to the industry network and a record of accomplishment of successful leasing entertainment sites. So that's where we're at with that one. If there are any questions, Chair.
So do you have a seconder for this proposal? Councillor Bell. We have a few questions. John Crawford Hawley, then we've got Helen.
Thank you, Chairman. I noticed the vision talked about Weston becoming a fantastic place to live. We will have potentially international audiences. It will magnify Weston-super-Mare. Now, I have what I consider to be a healthy scepticism of these warm, woolly words that come out of professional comms people. They don't actually mean anything. Let's look at the procurement. We're seeking specialist advice, somebody with strong connections, but we've got to fork out 75,000 quid for their sound advice. And my fear is that I'm long enough in the tooth to remember many of these consultants and the money they have made from this council, and they've hot-footed back to London with their fees and left us with absolutely nothing. Tropicana, Dolphin Square, Sovereign, Locking Road car park, and there are plenty of others where these companies have come in, provided their nice words in many documents, and gone home, leaving us bereft of anything. We've had soft marketing. I'm never quite sure what soft marketing means, but we're told there's a healthy level of interest. Again, I'm not quite sure what a healthy level of interest is. In point 324, if I've read the paper properly, given the high profile of this project, the process will include opportunities for relevant senior officers and members to input into the selection process. Could I be assured that the word senior applies to the officers but not to the members? You can answer my questions when I've finished. Point 43, briefings have been given to ward members. Well, this happens to sit in a ward where one of the members is the leader, which is excellent. The adjoining ward, which is my ward, one of my colleagues is another executive member. And though I'm very close to the Tropicana site, I have to say I remain somewhat outside the loop. The draft procurement plan is to be dealt with by the end of March. Then the executive member procurement plan approval will be advised by the director and head of strategic procurement by the 12th of April. Fine, I mean, this is getting on with it. But of course, the document there doesn't make any reference to the fact that the Placemaking Economy Planning Policy Panel is sitting on the 6th of March at 2 o'clock in this building, and it will be the only opportunity ordinary members have to get in and have their pennyworth before the 12th of April. So, colleagues, and those from beyond the boundary of Weston-super-Mare, those who live north of the Grumble-Pill-Reen, if you want to come into Weston-super-Mare and engage in a conversation about this procurement plan, the 6th of March is the only opportunity our exalted senior members are going to give us to converse on this matter before the April meeting. I'm sure there'll be a response.
Thank you, John. Well, please, Helen, I think you were next.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So my ward, Uphill, is another one of the wards that borders the ward that the Tropicana's in. But I really have a different view on this. I do see this as really good news for both the Tropicana and for Weston. Although, you know, the report does outline one of the main problems with outsourcing, which is the loss of expertise when a service is transferred from the public to the private sector. And the report says, and Councillor Solomon has indicated this, that we can't run the Tropicana ourselves. And yet, of course, that's exactly what we have been doing since Banks's dismal land showed us the potential for the venue. Before that, I was just mentioning earlier in our group meeting that, before that, there was a sign on the door of the Tropicana announcing its demolition. And once upon a time, we did also run our own theatre, the Playhouse, and our own events venue, the Winter Gardens, before they were both outsourced or sold off. But regardless of that, and, you'll all think I'm obsessed by the outsourcing of public services to the private sector, and I am, because I absolutely oppose it. But I am realistic enough to realise that it's happened, and for financial reasons and for many other reasons, we are where we are. So my questions are, I've got three actually, and I'm not sure some of these will be answered because they'll be confidentiality and commercial, or whatever it's called. I, like John Crockford-Hawley, are interested in who the organisations are who have expressed an interest as part of the soft market testing. Again, I'm always concerned by what resources we're setting aside to monitor the contract, and in this case ensure that the provider is maintaining and investing in the building, because my understanding from reading the papers is that's a big part of it, that once we hand it over we won't have any expense for maintaining and investing in the building. And on that note, also really connected to that, is how can we absolutely be sure that the cost of events the provider puts on in there do not price local people out? Because, there's been quite a lot in the media recently about, for instance, London theatre tickets, and how expensive they are. And if this provider's got to make a profit, in order to fulfil the terms of its contract, and they start to charge very high ticket prices, this could prove, this could mean that local residents can't afford them. So, I wonder if we can get something in the contract to actually make sure that that doesn't happen, and there'll always be, for every event, a certain amount of tickets at a reasonable price that people can afford. So those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Helen. Robert, you were next.
Yes, thank you very much. I feel that the Tropicana has been in a bit of a limbo for the past few years, so I will be really pleased if we're finally getting on with trying to create an exciting venue there. It could once again become a really important and key part of Western Seafront offer, and I really hope that will be the case. I do hope that the council will insist that whoever the operator is, they will have a robust and effective travel plan in place. If it is to be a venue for up to 8,000 people or so, it does have the potential to create significant traffic and parking problems in the local area, particularly for the residential areas on the other side of the beach lawns. Ideally, we would want people to access it and visitors to come with using public transport, but those who do come by car, for whatever reason, will need to be managed properly.
Thank you for those comments. Stu, you're next.
Two quick questions. One, will there be service user, as in public involvement in the procurement process? And two, as well, will there be a robust monitoring and written into the contract performance monitoring systems so that if they are failing to deliver against certain targets, such as was mentioned, pricing, but also delivery and quality of entertainment, that we can pull out an agreement from the contract? I'm extremely nervous at 15 years. I think that's far too long.
Thank you, Karen. I think, Terry, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, we've obviously been looking at the challenges that the council's got, coming over the next few years, which are, really disappointing with some of the things that we have to do. So I think a good news story can be, a really helpful and lift up the environment, I fully supported securing, a positive future for the Tropicana. It can be one of the most iconic assets we got in the council. We don't have many now. We're not like some other councils, like Bath, which have got a lot of assets. The history of the Tropicana has been very varied over the last, since it was closed in 2000. We were fortunate that we had Banksy, which gave it publicity, as well as the Sea Monster. There was, as someone said, the proposal at one time to demolish it, which I will say I voted strongly against, because I have a sort of nostalgic feel for the Tropicana. When I look around here, there isn't many people that would have known it when it was the pool. I can see a few that would have been around at that time, when we had a diving board there that was the largest in the UK. And it was challenging. I used to jump off it, but I must admit, I never had the courage to dive off it. I thought that might damage my future prospects. I could actually say my first date with my wife was actually in the Tropicana in the mid-60s, so, a long time ago. But there is some real funding available now. With £8 million to start it, that isn't going to be enough to do all what's wanted, but this is a real opportunity now to perhaps use that as a catalyst to secure a meaningful future for the site. But I don't want to see another white elephant. I don't want to see it fail again. I support the vision that's in the project. I think it's good. I think it can do there. But I'm not really keen when I look at the details of the project where it's being run overall. Selecting the right partner is going to be important. I don't think it is something that you could run in-house. I know the council's getting by with doing it at the moment, which is great because it keeps it in focus at the present time. And I think it will need a specialist operator, but I have a concern over the decision process that you've got here and the implications. I had hoped, first of all, that the final decision of the contract, I guess it would be council. I would have hoped it would come to full council, not to the executive. But even whoever it comes to, I don't want to see when it comes there, it's a foregone conclusion and all you're doing is rubber stamping it. The process at the moment seems to be devoid, a bit like John was saying over there, devoid of any material or decisive input from elected members. I think it's crucial that we should be fully involved from the start. It disappoints me. I've been in Western all my life. I'm born and bred here. There's others here that have been the same. There's been no approach. You talk about ward councillors. This is more important than the ward. This is important for North Somerset. It could be something that brings real people, tourists, back into the town. And we have to get it right. We don't want another white elephant with it. And I did make a note on what John said there, because I made a note here. Given the high profile of this project, the process will include opportunities for relevant senior officers and members to input into the selected process. The input will be carefully managed be carefully managed to ensure compliance with procurement. This implies that, you know, the councillors should, to me, the councillors shouldn't be really involved. It implies that because there's some confidential stuff in it, councillors can't do it. We're elected to represent our residents, and you know we're not being given the opportunity in this, most of us here, to actually represent our residents. Now, although Caritas suggested 15 years might be too long, I think you'll find that's probably less. It's going to have to be longer than that if you want a real serious investment in it. In our village football team, they wanted funding from the FA, and we had to increase the lease to give them a 25-year lease before they could get a moderate amount of some funds, much less than what there is here. So I think there should be more involvement with the councillors. I know scrutiny, I don't think that's enough action with it, really. I think there ought to be more involvement with councillors with it. Because I think this is very important. I think, it is a difficult climate ahead. I think if we make a success of this, it will be a real good flag to fly for North Somerset Council. Not just for the few wards around here and not for Western. I think it's important. I think, this success will attract a lot more people here if we can get it going like it used to be. I just think that at the moment, I feel the lack of people that could give some positive input to this aren't being included in the process, and that disappoints me. And
Thank you for that.
And listening to some of them now, it's quite clear that's the case.
I think Mike's taking that on board. Thank you. Peter, did you have your hand up? Where are you, Peter Burden? Did you have your hand up? Excellent. Sorry?
Peter Bryant.
I've got Mark Caniford, then Mike Bell, and then you. Okay, over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, just a couple of comments I would like to say. I mean, I think it is exciting. I was agreeing with your comments at the beginning. However, this is really, really very important. We've got Burnbeck at one end, we've got Tropicana at the other, and it's really finishing off a lot of the work that was started many, many years ago. I think what we should take out of the positive we should take out of this is there are still people out there who are interested in running a venue like this. The soft marketing proved that. Now, what that gets decided, that will go definitely through scrutiny panel, who will have a detailed report. So, one of the problems we do suffer in this council, isn't it, is councillors grumble that they don't get a chance to comment, but they don't turn up at scrutiny either. So that's where we find ourselves. Go to the scrutiny panels, because everyone's invited to go to them, comment, get involved, and tell executive members what you're looking for, what you want, and what you think works best.
Thank you. To you, Mike.
Just on the point of...
No, John, no. Over to Mike.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on the point about member involvement and also service users, for want of a better expression, or users of the facility, because I do think we mustn't overlook that. So I do think that's an important part of the process for procuring an operator, not just putting them in front of the great and the good at the council, but also putting them in front of the future users of the facility, because there is a danger that's been sort of alluded to here that you get the experts involved and they come up with recommendations and you're automatically sure to be getting the right thing. But I think if the history of the Tropicana has taught you anything, it's that what we think is the right thing to do is very rarely the right thing to do. So actually the testing with potential future users of that building are really critical. So I definitely think that's something that we need to take away. And I'm sure Mike Solomon is nodding as I'm saying that. Just on that point about ensuring that members are part of the process. So I know that I've spoken to Mike about this. I know that Mike is really keen to make sure that relevant members are involved, and the wording in the report is worded as relevant members specifically to try and be flexible about how we do that. So it doesn't talk about it necessarily having been senior members. It doesn't talk about it having to be ward councillors. It doesn't talk about it having to be executive members. It says relevant members, precisely because we want to be able to bring in people cross-party from across North Somerset who've got some relevant expertise and experience to make. So I'm sure that Mike will take that on board and make sure that the spirit of the conversation and debate this evening is implemented. However, I just want to put one caveat to that, and that is we do have a governance system in the council, and we can't chuck the governance system out of the window just because people want to be involved in something. So, our contract standing orders and our procurement and commissioning process, which is set out in the report, still has to happen, that doesn't mean that we haven't got opportunities to engage with members along the way. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Mike. And I think Peter Bryant.
Yeah. It was very interesting listening to all the pros and cons. And at this particular juncture, I feel there's more against the proposition than there is for. But if we're going to make any advancement, we have to pick it up and run with it. But there's just one point I want to make, which will ultimately have a large effect on the costings. There is no foundations at the Tropicana. And I can tell you that the rock face is 32 metres deep at that point. That's it, Chairman.
Thank you for the geography there, or geology is it perhaps? John Crawford Hawley, did you want to come in once more?
It was only to correct my great colleague, Mark Hannaford, that indeed when it comes to attendance at my scrutiny panel, we have never ever failed to have at least quorate numbers turning up, and invariably many more. So, but I'm conscious, the executive member doesn't necessarily know that because he doesn't attend these.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Right, Mike, would you like to sum up?
First of all, I'm actually going to answer some of these questions, if you don't mind, Madam Chair. So, as far as John's comments were concerned, I share some of his views on consultants. But sometimes there is a need. As for the fact that we don't attract an international audience, look at Sea Monster and look at Dismal Land. We did attract an international audience, so I'll disagree with that. As far as Helen's points were concerned, pricing of events. Now, it's a commercial proposition. We won't be able to dictate any more than we do to the Playhouse what they charge for the events. We can guide them and we can give them hints, but from a commercial point of view, we can't dictate to commercial organisations what they can charge. And as for in-house running, our team has done an excellent job. They do a great job of the events they're doing. What I'm saying is the scope of it getting larger, maybe there's not the ability to do that. Robert, travel plans, etc., all these sort of big events would have to go through SAG anyway, so that would all be put in place as part of the travel plan. Caritas, public involvement, yes, it would be good to get public involvement, as Mike has said. Again, performance delivery, it's very difficult when you're awarding a contract to put various clauses in. And as for 15 years being too long, from a commercial point of view, nobody's going to want to take a contract under 15 years and invest millions of pounds into a facility. It's never going to happen from a commercial point of view. So it's minimum 15. I expect it to be more. So that covers that one. Terry, yes, Mike's already spoken about involving other councillors, and it will be carefully managed. Peter, I don't necessarily agree with your summing up that there's more against it than for it. I mean, the way I'm hearing tonight, there's far more for it than against it. And also, we would have various engineering reports about the base of the place. So that I've summed up. That's me finished.
Okay, thank you then, Mike. Can I have all those in favour of accepting the recommendation then, please? Hands up. Thank you. All those abstaining? Against?
There's a surprise.
Thank you. It's moved. Carried. It's carried. Thank you very much. Over to Councillor Gibbons for noting the corporate parenting report. I think, Catherine, you want to say one or two things.
Yes, just briefly, and I'm not sure whether our young director, Bethany Swan, is online. She might want to speak. If she isn't, no worries.
I don't think she is.
Okay, no problem. What I was going to say
hang on,
is...
Catherine, sorry, she is online.
Okay.
No hand up, so she doesn't want to speak. So sorry, carry on.
Okay, thank you. As you've seen, it's a brief report, so it will have been easy for you all to read, and I'm sure you have read it in detail. It deals with how we listen to children in care and care-experienced young people, because that is a key part of being a corporate parent. We want to hear the impact from their own experience of what we do, whether we're doing it right, whether we could do more, what we could change. And you'll see here, yes, Beth will speak after me. I'll call her in because I've just had a message. So we've got the various forums and groups, and we've got Beth, our young director, who works with those forums. We've got the technology, the Mind of My Own, which is an amazing system for gathering feedback, various forms of participation for our young people, our corporate parenting panel, and of course the survey, where there are some bullet points there listed to extract some of the findings from the latest Bright Spot survey run by Quorum Voice, and I have just emailed the full report to you all, should you want to read it in your leisure time if you haven't already accessed it. Some of the other points that we've got in the table here, the You Said We Did, are findings that we've had come out of the meetings that we've held with young people at the corporate parenting panel on various themes. And I would like to thank all those councillors who have attended various sessions. I think you found it impactful and useful, I know. But I think that on occasion we either have not enough councillors, or on the last occasion we were in danger of having more councillors than young people at the session, and certainly with professionals and officers I think it was a little bit overwhelming for some young people. So I've been having conversations with our young director today, and I know that our new DCS, Claire, has also had conversations about how we are going to reframe and refresh those engagement exercises so that young people can find them more enjoyable and more impactful. So that's an ongoing process. But some of the things that have come out of it, the thing that strikes me most in this piece of work is the feedback we had about language, the language that we use in documents, how we write documents, how we seek to address people. And I think a lot of the changes that the young people wanted us to make from their point of view would actually have been very welcome across the board in council papers. I think they would make what we do a lot more friendly and easier to read for a lot of our population, not just people under 25. So I think they had a very, very valuable input there. You can read the other points there, and I think another key thing is that they want to be more involved in the development of our plans and strategies. And this is something Beth and I were talking about this afternoon. And this goes slightly beyond our role as corporate parents, but I think we all feel that there is a strong role for our young people in feeding back to us about our plans and strategies. We've talked about this before in the previous administration. We did manage to get the Youth Parliament up and running, and we need to reinvigorate that again. So certainly we've talked about this with Beth and how she can help us, and how young people and some of our care experienced young people can help us, because they are very, very articulate. They have at first hand experienced council services in a way that other young people haven't. So they would be very keen to be some of our delegates to a youth parliament. That's another piece of ongoing work. And I know that Beth, who is there online, has a couple of asks of us as councillors and corporate parents. So if it's possible, I'd like to bring her in.
Actually, Catherine, Bethany has emailed in to the council to ask if she could speak. So yes, I will let her come on in.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are you there, Beth?
Hi, yeah. Thanks for having me, everyone. Can everyone see me and hear me okay, first of all?
Yes, I gather you've got a couple of questions.
Yeah, so I've actually been really thoroughly enjoying this session today. I've been listening along in the background. It's been just really enjoying to hear how passionate everyone is about our little town and about our young people and for the future of our young people in this town. Some of the questions that I have for you today will revolve around your role as corporate parents.
Beth, hang on. I think we're not hearing you very clearly. What can we... Apparently, Beth, you need to turn your volume down.
Down?
Down a bit more?
Wait, so I need to speak quietly or?
Yeah, I think so, yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay, Claire's just said it's your volume.
Wait, hang on, Beth, I've got things confused. What are we doing here, Nick?
It's our end that's too loud. It's been... You're too clear, Beth. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's not
you carry on. We'll try and hear you. Carry on. You have 2 questions.
Yeah, so my questions are around your role as corporate parents. So those of you who attended our latest corporate parenting panel had heard our young people speak about their need and want for mentoring from other adults in the council, namely their councillors and corporate parents. So I'm asking you today, as not only my corporate parent, but as a corporate parent to over 200 people, what is it that you might be able to offer us in terms of your time? Is it business that you might be able to offer an apprenticeship? Is it that you might be able to offer maybe a week's work experience or even a weekend's work experience? It will all help our young people to develop their life skills and to move further into life and to give them the aspirations and the ambitions that we wish for them. Our second ask is that, as Councillor Gibbon mentioned, we have recently had an uptick in councillors at corporate parenting panel. At our most recent Care Leavers Forum, our young people have requested that they are able to meet some of their councillors and understand more about what you do. So my ask is, how do we make what you do more accessible to our young people? How do we help them to understand how they can reach out to you? Because this is something that not all young people are aware of. Not all young people even know what a local councillor is, let alone what they can do for you, even as a corporate parent. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Beth. I will ask Claire to take on board with Catherine your requests, and I'm sure that they will be talking to you in the near future about how we can address some of your concerns. Obviously, we want our young people to be on board with everything we do and to understand.
Yeah.
Thank you. Catherine?
Yes, I was just going to say thank you. And if you do have any of those opportunities that spring to mind, you know, you can offer yourself, or you know somebody in your community can do so, just get in touch with me and we'll sort of work out how we can take that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And yes, please do let Catherine know if you've got anything you can offer. Oh, gosh. Item 12, there are no petitions. Item 13, there are no motions. Item 14, we come to question time. So if I'd like to remind you all about question time. Any questions? There are some hands. So, first of all, you say who your question is directed to, which executive member. Then you ask your question with a very little amount of preamble. Then you wait for the answer. If anybody wants a follow-up question, they go back to the bottom of the list. Okie dokie? I think we have a little list. Who's that? Sorry? Councillor Smith? Where are you? We're back there.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question to the leader, and I emailed him about 2 weeks ago now, and it's about the ACOM review, which states vehicles running over the mini roundabout on Clevedon Seafront is common, and there is the potential for head-on collisions. Given the limited space, I believe it breaches section 188 of the Highways Code, whereas, as suggested, a T-junction in place would be supported by sections 160, 200, 206, and 211. Furthermore, the ACOM review states 84% of residents do not like this feature. Our own highways team have admitted it's pointless and it will serve no benefit to 80 to 90% of road users. And the RAC have even said it may be cheaper and simpler, given the limited space, to have a T-junction. I completely agree that the simpler the road is, the safer it is for all road users. So, well, will the leader support me in saying that this lacklustre idea has to be stopped? Thank you.
I'm always in favour of stopping lacklustre ideas. So, I mean, I thank Councillor Smith for the question. He's absolutely right that 2 weeks ago he raised this issue with officers, copying me in. I know the officer has responded and I know that Councillor Young is considering the issue as the relevant exec member in the context of the report that's due to come before the executive next month on the next phase of works on the beach, and we've all heard your views.
Thank you. Robert Payne, Councillor Payne.
My question is for Councillor Mark Caniford. When you look around Western Town Centre, it's quite evident that there's quite a high occupancy rate of retail units, particularly when you consider comparable towns, some of which are really struggling. And I think that's something we can be really pleased about. But one obvious exception to this, the shop units along the south side of Waterloo Street, from number 2 to number 14 Waterloo Street, where there are 9 units, only 2 of which are occupied. My understanding is that these shop units are all owned by the same landlord, who appears to be charging excessive rents or something. So do you think that there's anything the council can do to engage with this landlord to try and bring these units back into useful occupation?
Thank you. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you for the question. As you are aware, the council don't own these properties, and it is very difficult for us to intervene. However, what I have asked for is an update in terms of business rates, to make sure that the landlord is paying those business rates, because that is probably the only tool in our box that we can use to try and enforce commercial landlords to be sensible and look at renting their properties at a commercial rentable rate. And we all know currently that the commercial rates are on the decline, but I'm afraid some landlords simply do not accept that and therefore leave their properties empty. And you're quite right, it does have an overall effect. But I think in North Somerset generally we can be really pleased. I mean, Clevedon, Portishead, and okay, Knellsy's struggling a little bit with occupancy rates, but doing pretty well anyway compared to other parts of the country. So over all our towns in North Somerset, our occupancy rates are pretty good compared to other areas.
Thank you, Mark. Over to you, Helen.
Thanks, Chair. I wasn't going to ask a question this evening, actually, but one of our public speakers has prompted me to ask Hannah in her absence, and, you know, I'll follow up with her basically in an email, but which is really supporting John Martell's request of us to, can we give serious consideration to allowing motorcyclists to be able to use bus lanes throughout North Somerset as they do in the Bristol City Council area. I speak as a former moped rider in my youth, and I completely, you know, recognise what John was saying about the dangers actually of a motorbike of any CC going in that, particularly thinking about the Long Ashton bypass, going in that lane, because it's effectively a single lane road now with the bus lane in one of it. And I think, you know, if we could, I just think if we could look into it, that would be really good. So I'll pass that question on to Hannah anyway, because obviously she's not here.
I think Mike will answer you actually, Helen.
I was just going to say, I completely agree with the premise of the question and the public speaker, and I've already taken action during the meeting to initiate a review of this issue. So we'll definitely look at it seriously, and I'm sure Councillor Young will hopefully bring forward some proposals before too long.
Thank you. Caritas, over to you.
Just a quick one, I think it's for Mike. Mike Bell, sorry. Would you consider getting the comms people to produce a monthly report that outlines the geographical remit of press releases given from North Somerset Council?
Yeah, I'm tempted to say yes. Yes, we do already get very comprehensive reports from the communications team. I'm very happy to ask them to include that in that, and actually to share that communications dashboard to all members for information. And then if you're not interested in receiving it going forward, maybe let them know so that they don't waste their time sending it to everyone. But yeah, very happy to do that. And if people have got any suggestions about things that they'd like more press releases to go out about in their patch, please do contact the comms team, because they'll be very happy to be supportive and helpful.
Thank you. Oh, pardon me. Thank you for that. Mike Pryke, where are you, Michael? Well, there you are, down there.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the leader, and with regards to some of the things that we've been discussing this evening about backbencher engagement with the work of the council. I thank the leader for recently a lovely piece from the communications team about North Somerset Road set to benefit from an innovative repairs trial. Excellent work, big fan. You then name one road in Clevedon, which is Hill Road, which I'm sure, as Mike will be aware, has recently had quite a lot of work done to it. I could name about 5 or 6 roads just in my ward that require more attention than just Hill Road. Also, recently, we've had this stuff around the car parking charges coming in. I'm sure, again, if I had been asked, I could have given my opinion on behalf of my residents without even the need of a consultation, given how well these proposals have gone down in Clevedon. My question is, would the leader be prepared to do some work about how we can further engage backbenchers on almost all issues that this council is involved with?
Over to you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I'm going to ignore the points that you've made about specific policies because you were just making a political point there, really, weren't you? And let's focus on the substance of it, which is how we can engage members. I'm really keen that we do more around how we can engage with members across the council. It was one of the themes that we specifically asked the Local Government Association team to look at as part of our corporate peer challenge, and we will be setting up a group to look at how we can further engage members on a whole range of issues going forward. So absolutely give you that commitment. But I would underline the point that it's a two-way street, isn't it? And we can build things, but members do have to positively engage in the process and the structures that exist. And that's really critical all the way through the process. It's really noticeable that there's a real diversity of experience from members around how informed they feel about things. And that is directly linked to how much you turn up and how much you read your briefings and how much you participate in the debates. So let's all remember it is a two-way street.
Thank you, Mike. I think Martin Williams, where are you, Martin?
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, there you are.
Just before I make my comments, I want to make it clear that these comments are aimed at the comms of the council, not anything that Councillor Solomon has said. The council will be aware that there's been an issue with the floral clock recently in West.
Who's your question aimed at?
To the leader.
To the leader. Thank you very much.
The council have made comms recently that they had no prior knowledge of the work taking place at the floral clock. I have 2 emails here, one of which a officer of the Council Police Directorate is offering manpower and help taking away the soil from the floral clock, and also a water bowser for mixing the concrete. Could the leader explain to me why the council felt it necessary to make the Lions Club look like they didn't have permission, or that there was no prior knowledge, when it appears the council did have prior knowledge?
Over to you, Mike.
So I can only respond. Sorry, is this chuckling or something? Are you sorry? Are you all right, Pete? Do you need assistance or something? No, I'm just checking because it's hardly a laughing matter, is it? So I can't really answer your question because the information that were provided to the communications team was based on the information that we were given by officers. So you can imagine that when the issue with the floral clock first arose, the first question that was asked by the exec member, Mike Solomon, was what information did we have, what contact did we have about this issue? And that then translated into the response and the position that the council put forward. If you've got evidence that that was not correct and was not valid, rather than coming to full council and trying to make a point, and especially starting your remarks by saying you weren't trying to do that, it would have been helpful to have that earlier in the process, particularly because I know that you're a member of the Lions and we're intimately involved in this issue, although I note that you haven't declared an interest in that. It would have been really helpful when we were trying to get joint agreement on the communications to raise those issues at that point before we'd actually issued it, rather than coming here after the event. I'm really interested, Martin. I'm really interested in solving issues and not creating new ones. So let's try and work together, build a brighter future for that particular issue, learn the lessons and move on.
Thank you. Could I ask that everybody gives a copy of their questions in to Philippa here for the minutes? And that's everybody. Thank you very much. Moving on. Item 15, matters from previous meetings, none. Leaders' announcements.
None for me.
I think you've had quite a few, Mike, so thank you very much. Chief Exec announcements? No. Forward plan, Mike?
Move for noting.
Noted. They don't take a vote on that, do they? Thank you. Policy and Scrutiny Panel report, none. Reports and matters from Policy Overview and Scrutiny, none. Reports and matters referred from other committees, none. Reports on joint arrangements and external organisations. Avon Fire Authority, Robert?
Yeah, the Fire Authority met yesterday. The significant matter being the setting of the budget. It was referred to in our earlier agenda item on our budget, and it was agreed by the Fire Authority that their part of the council tax would increase by 2.99%, the maximum allowable under the government referendum limit. That's an increase of £2.48 per year for a Band D property owner. Although we agreed the precept and council tax, the full detail of the budget was deferred to next month's meeting, as members were very keen to find inventive ways to lessen the impact of the cuts imposed on us by central government. In particular, we're going to be looking at rearranging how the capital programme is financed with the aim of delaying, deferring or maybe reducing the inevitable cuts that are arising from the reduction in funding of fire and rescue services. Just as with this and all local authorities, Fire Authority members are frustrated that the government continually reduces their grant and also the non-domestic rate distribution, and also at the same time restricts the amount we can raise through council tax. There is no doubt that this will lead to cuts in the service provided, but members are very keen to minimise the impact this will have as much as possible.
Thank you, Robert. Could you send that, what you've just said, to Philippa for the minutes, please?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. Avon and Somerset Police, we've had a written report. I don't know whether, Peter, you wanted to say any more?
Just to say, Madam Chairman, it's events have really overtaken this in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the main thing I wanted to bring out was the unnecessary increase in the precept.
Thank you, Peter. John?
Could I ask Councillor Crew, if I've read the report correctly, at the 3 3/4 hour meeting, which was there to partly produce the precept, when £13 was requested.
Could you go a bit nearer to your mic, please, John? I can't hear you.
Sorry, I do apologise. The vote at the police precept meeting was apparently 7-6, but 2 members abstained. Now, I don't know if Councillor Crew has any comment to make, but the idea of anyone abstaining on a budget debate, I find a dereliction of duty. We all have a duty, whether we like the requested rises or not. We have a duty, surely, to put our marker down for or against something, and not abstain or pop out to the loo or whatever when a difficult decision has to be made. Maybe I've misread the report, but I'm sure Councillor Crew will be able to help me on that.
Before you do that, Peter, could we get Roger Whitfield to make his comments? Roger? It's not working.
Okay, sorry, can you hear me? Just very briefly on the report, it said in the report that the police number are now at full strength plus 40 officers, which sounds very promising for policing in the Avon and Somerset area, but it doesn't really mean anything. Full strength is a vague term, I thought. I just wondered if anyone had any clarity on what that meant. Is full strength sufficient for effective policing of the area, or is full strength just the maximum number of police that can fit within the budget? So a little bit of context on that would be useful if anyone's got it, or ask it at the next meeting if not. Oh, look, it's working now.
Do you want to answer those two, Peter?
Yes, in the first instance, John's point, absolutely right. In closed session, we had voted to go for the £10. When we got into open session, One member changed their vote and the other one abstained, with one that had abstained all along because she couldn't make up her mind. So the vote went for £13 because after an agreed proposal, it was amended at the meeting. In terms of police numbers, we're now up to, as I say, up to full strength. The additional 40 officers is a 2-year funding, additional funding from the Home Office to cover 2 years as to whether Avon will then keep them on. The big problem is, although there are full strength now, not all neighbourhood teams are fully manned. We are lucky in Weston-super-Mare, we're one of the few teams that was fully manned, but the North of the District and the country teams, dealing with the farmers and so on, they're not fully operative, and that is because although we're full strength, there are a number of officers going through training, which obviously does delay things from actually being out on the streets and around. But the positive thing there, which I'd also like to bring out there, is the fact the new CCTV system, which we agreed some time ago within Weston, allowed some of those drugs people to be taken off the streets by identifying cars driving around in Weston.
Thank you for that then. Any more questions, then perhaps you could send them to Peter by an email. Moving on to, I don't know whether we've got a West of England Combined Authority report. Do we? Anybody?
We don't, I don't think.
Over to you, Nigel.
Chairman, I'm not even aware of having a meeting planned. The last one, as you know, was in court, and then after that it was cancelled. And since then I've heard nothing from the clerk there about any future meetings.
So are you the person that can chase that and see what's happening?
Yes, I'll try.
Thank you. That would be helpful. Any urgent business? We've had a very important meeting tonight to fix the budget. I'm sure everybody will go away and think about everything they've heard and everything they've heard described. Thank you very much indeed. Safe journey home.